Hi everyone, welcome to our deep dive and technical presentation of the Harvest Hope NGO website. So my name is NANYONGA VANESSA, and before I even get into anything else, you may wonder, what is this website? What does it do? So this website basically bridges the gap between small-scale farmers and a wider audience or a wider market. So it enables our small-scale farmers to provide their goods to a wider market. Now, let me say the splash company. Maybe they need mangoes. There is no way a splash company is going to see a small scale mango farmer. So this is what our website does. It bridges that gap between the small scale farmers and the bigger market. So together with my colleagues, we are going to walk you through the architecture, the front-end logic, the JavaScript functionality, and the PHP back-end system that power this whole website. So today, we are not going to only explain what the website does, we are going to explain how it does it behind the scenes or at the back end. So we are going to go from the structure of the interface to we're going to go from the structure of the interface to the communication between the browser, the server, and the database. So we're going to dive into each and every layer of our system. So our goal in building this system was to build a site that is fast, is accessible, is secure, is scalable enough to support an NGO environment, and it's reliable, and it's user trustworthy, because of course we want our users to be very secure and all. So before we even dive into the code itself, it's important to understand the overall architecture of our system. So our application follows a 3-layer architecture. It has the front-end layer, the back-end layer, and the database layer. And of course, each of these different layers that we have their own specific responsibilities, or they wouldn't be there. So it's also these different layers enable us to maintain the website more easily, and it's of course easier to debug it. So now, when we go into the front end layer or our client side, so to build the client side, we used HTML5, we used CSS3, and we also used JavaScript, and we made sure that we avoid the heavy frameworks like React, because we know these frameworks are very powerful, but they also increase the loading time of a site. Now in cases of low networks, they're going to increase the loading time very, very much. So we made sure we avoid the very, very heavy frameworks. So and we are building this website for our small scale farmers, and we know most of our Ugandan small scale farmers are found in the rural areas, and we also know our rural areas in Uganda don't really have that good network. Most of their networks are very low. So why would we build a website designed for our small scale farmers, and yet we are not meeting their requirements? So we made sure that we do something that even on the lowest internet, maybe 3G network, you are going to be able to load this network and this website, and it's going to work perfectly, and it's going to load very, very fast. So by using this very lightweight technology, we ensure that the website loads very fast, consumes less mobile data, because you don't want to waste your data, and it performs very efficiently on even the very, very low smartphones and computers, and it also improves accessibility for users with very limited connectivity. So yes, so we made sure that it's a very good website. So when we go to the server side, with the backend layer, where we are using the PHP 8.5, so PHP acts as the communication bridge between the front end and the database. So whenever a user performs an action, maybe they sign up for the newsletter, they submit a contact form, they make a donation, so the browser sends a HTTP request to the PHP backend. So the back end then it validates the user input, it processes the business logic, it prevents invalid data. So now, what's the invalid data? So someone can want to be funny and maybe put, instead of their name, they put maybe empty space, or they put a dash. So we made sure that it prevents all this data, this invalid data, from coming to our back end. So yes, that's it for Oh, we also used PHP because it's it works very well with the database we use. We're using the PostgreSQL, so it works very well with it. So that's why we are using. So yeah. So when you go to the database layer, so for our database, we are using the PostgreSQL, which is hosted on a Superbase. So Postgre is a very powerful database, which is known for its reliability, its security, its data consistency, and its scalability, which we need for our website. So yes, and also it follows the ACID compliance. So we all know that ACID compliance stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So yes, this is why we used it. So this guarantees that the information we are getting from our users is valid. So especially maybe donation requests and user information, so they remain accurate and they remain protected at all times. Over even when power goes, they remain accurate, they remain protected. So yes, even when there is a network interruption, our data is still secure, it's still protected, it's still accurate. So yes, and the Superbase also provides backups and secure APIs, which reduces the deployment complexity and also improves the reliability of the system. So yeah, so I'm going to take us briefly into the index.html structure. So in our HTML structure, we had cinematic HTML tags like the header, the nav, the section, the article, the main, and the footer. Now, of course, the cinematic tag is important for very many reasons, but the most common may be organization. But this is not okay. It's a very main reason why we used it, but we also wanted to ensure that it improves accessibility. Now, so the accessibility, now let me say for our screen readers used by the impaired users, they can better understand the structure of the page and they can easily navigate through the content. So this is why we use these cinematic tags, so that even the visually impaired users are able to access it, they're able to use it very well and very efficiently. And also these cinematic tags, they improve the search engine optimization, like maybe Google or Chrome. They can better interpret our content. And this of course increases our visibility, the visibility of our NGO. So when our visibility is increased, more donations come in, more market comes in more. So yes, apart from the organizations, we also have these two uses for using the cinematic tags. So now we all know that JavaScript, we all know that CSS and HTML only give us a static design. So we make sure we also improve. We put in our JavaScript to enable us to give us a responsive website. So the JavaScript powers features like the DOM manipulation, the button interactions, the form validation, the animation handling, the navigation toggles, and so many other things that my colleagues are going to dive in. So, for example, maybe when the user clicks that donate button, the JavaScript enables the pop-up window to come up, and so many other features that are in there. So that my colleagues are going to get into once again. So I'm going to end my presentation here and enable my colleagues to come in and explain the JavaScript. And let me call in Shanita to come in with the JavaScript. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the state management and the document object model and the document object model. Basically, the document object model is like a bridge between the HTML web page and the JavaScript. Under this, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the code editor showing the script.javascript. Basically, the script.javascript is like a file holding all our logic. And when we go to our code, the document.add event listener, the code acts as a security guard. It will tell the browser not to let the script.javascript run until the DOM is fully built. Yep. Then the next thing that you're going to talk about is the dark mode and the window API. So once the DOM is ready, the script, the JavaScript needs to figure out if our computer is in light or dark mode. To do this, it will call the window API. So the window API is like the highest authority in the browser. So when you run our code, it will generate a media list object. The media list object is just like a packet of data from the browser, and inside it is a property called the matches that says either true or false. So in case the browser is set to dark mode, it will return true. In case it's set to it will return false in case it's set to light mode. The next thing is the local storage synchronicity. Basically, the local storage is a synchronous key value store provided by the browser. It will persist even if the user closes the tab. So if we relate it to our code, the local storage dot the get item theme. So if we relate it to the local storage dot get item theme, this will check the cabinet to see if we picked a theme. So if we click a button to change the theme, it uses a local storage set item to write down the choice in the browser so that the browser remembers it instantly, even though we refresh on the page or move to a new page. The next thing we're going to talk about is the math of the cursor. So basically this one, it basically deals with measurements. So it basically deals with measurements, the exact physical width of an element, and So when we go to our script.javascript, the code will handle the image cursor slider. It will use our code, the get bounding client, react.width to talk to the DOM and ask how wide the image card is, the decimal point. So once it gets the exact measurements, that's when we'll go to handling the CSS transform. So it will use our code track.transform to inject a CSS rule to physically slide the cursor track either to the left or the right. That's when you're able to slide, or our images are able to slide to the left or to the right. The next thing will be the transition. So basically, that's all with the document object model. And the next speaker will talk about the scroll tracking and the network requests. That's all for my part. My name is NAKATIKO SHANITA DEBORAH.
Hello, my name is OTIM EMUNOT, and for this case, we are going to take a case in point where a user has forgotten their password, but they would want to log back into their account, and they would just be required to get into the login form and click forgot password, but then they would need to remember the email that they used to create the account that they want to log back into. So in our table of users, we'll pick out one user to use as an example, and we'll pick an account that was registered under Simon with an email that says simon@gmail.com. So we'll use that email to try and reset the password for that account, and after putting in the email, the person will be required to put in their new password that they would require to log into their account. So in this case, I will have the name as password as well, and you just confirm the same password. So when you click update, you see that it says that it has been updated successfully, and then it will redirect you to the login page where you then put in the new password and your user email. So in the code, what is actually happening is that we have a PHP file here that is named API reset password, and just from the previous examples from the previous presentation that we have had, we know that this actually just emphasizes that we have a connection to the database, and particularly we are going to be looking at the PHP table, the table the users will be storing their data. And for this case, we're having variables of email and password as the only parameters that we shall need the user to know to reset their password. And then the first if statement considers checking in that both the email and password have been entered. In this case, it says if the email and the passwords are empty, it would return an error message that would require the user to fill in the given fields. And if they are not empty, that's why we go into the try block. So the first step that we shall be taking as a PHP administrator is to check if the email that the person is putting in is actually existing in the users table back in the database. And this is what this first line of code is going to be doing. So from what the user has entered, it will be used as a reference point. An email in this case will be our casing point. So we'll have the email that will be acting as the ID, which the database is going to use to identify the particular user. So what that SQL statement actually states is that if you look into line 22, we have an SQL statement that updates the user's password, but it's going to be referencing that email that the person has entered. So if the where clause in this case was not there, we would find that would be by mistake would be messing up all the other user data as far as their password is concerned. So the where clause is actually very important in this case, just to specify which user exactly are we dealing with. And then if the user is there and they have actually entered the details correctly, then we shall return a message that says password successful. And then if by any chance that we fail for any reason that we fail to update the password, will also return that message as well that the password has failed to be updated. And then since in this case we're dealing with a nested if, I will check we have a first if out there and then a second if in there. We'll have an else statement for a case where a user entered an email that wasn't actually registered in the database. So here we find it echoes a message that says there was no account that was found with that particular email that was set. So according to the PDO execution that was declared in the DB file, the PHP file would also return an error in case there was a connection error back to the database. And that is as far as the login is concerned for a user who would have forgotten their password. And going back into our website, I would finalize with taking a case in point where one would like to subscribe for our newsletters. So at the bottom, we actually have a form that requires someone to put in their username. And this particular point, we're going to have their email and contact as well. So back in what if we'd actually just put a random name here and then a contact and an email of sort and then subscribe, and if we you would have a pop-up that says thank you for subscribing. But if we go into our database currently and check under the subscribers table, I would see that the person who has just subscribed has been added to the table as well for subscribers. And there we have it as user 003, and we have their contact and their email as well. So it's also included that we have the time in which they subscribed, which could be useful for administrative purposes. So we will see what happens for the user to actually be entered into the table. Into our code again would have the subscribers.php file, and again it will just require that this document connects to the backend via the db.php file, which is actually our reference file for most of our pages here. And then we'll have the header that just emphasizes the connection as well. And our method here will be the post. As it was stated earlier, the post is actually a better option since it helps to ensure the user's information is kept secure. So in this case, we're going to be dealing with three variables. That's why we have the name, phone number, and email that are declared. And to the attributes, we have actually just added a trim just to get rid of extra spaces, probably when the user is entering their details. So just to make sure that everything here is valid and we don't have blank information that is entered into our table, we are going to first confirm that one, the user has entered a name into the name field, a contact, and an email as well. So the try block goes ahead to prepare an insert statement for the SQL command that actually prepares to insert into the table subscribers. This table particularly is in our database that was already created. So we are going to have into the table subscribers, we'll be able to add their name, that is a variable that we shall pick from their input, their contact number, and then their email. So in this case, why we have question marks as placeholders, in this case is actually for security reasons, given that we are not sure exactly who will be entering what particular name, so we couldn't want to restrict that. And for that case, in case all those details are available, then the next line, line 14, would go ahead to execute that command and be able to push whatever information was collected from the user form into the database. So in case it is successful, the pop-up that we saw is actually stated on line 15 that actually pops up a success message that says subscribed successfully. And then we look also at the scenario where some fields were probably missing, and there would have to pop up a message that says they could not subscribe to that particular newsletter. And in case of any failures with communications from the database, we would have error messages that will be originating from the parent file, and then would have invalid data or an invalid post request. And that should be it for as far as the subscriber information is concerned as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is ELWANGA Anthony, and I'm going to be taking you through the PHP backend, that is the advanced authentication. So let's start with the secure registration. In the file API, signup.php, we start with the header, open bracket, that header content type semicolon, colon application JSON. So this header modifies the HTTP response headers and tells the browser to interpret our output as JSON payload, not an HTML text document. So on lines 6 to 8, we grab the post data, that is the username, that trim username, then the double question marks. So the double question mark is just basically a null coalescing operator. So this operator basically, if the hacker by any chance bypasses our HTML form and sends a URL without a username field, that username post brackets username, it would be undefined. So yeah, it would be undefined. So the double question mark defaults it into an empty string, preventing PHP warning logs. Then we go to the trim function, then strips away any invisible white spaces, tabs, or new lines. That's basically the use of that trim function in that statement up there. So we go to the line 16. This is where the database interactions and the hash algorithm is. So we select a statement to ensure that email. On line 16, we select a statement to ensure that email doesn't exist. If they pass, we hit line 21, that is hash equals password, then yeah, that line, open brackets, $ password, open default, yeah. So this function is basically a masterpiece. It currently maps the bcrypt algorithm. The bcrypt algorithm is designed to be intentionally slow and computationally expensive. Even if the hacker steals our database, they cannot reverse engineer the password. That is basically the use of that bcrypt algorithm. Furthermore, the password hash automatically generates a cryptographically secure random salt and embeds it directly into the final 60-character hash string, which defeats the rainbow table attacks. Yeah. So let's log the user in via the API login.php. On line 4, we call session start then that. So this tells the server to generate a unique session ID that is it's like a long random string and sends an HTTP set cookie header to the user's browser containing the PHP SESSID. So when the user submits their password, we pull their records from the database and execute the password verify. That is, yeah, that password verify. So this function, this verify password function, extracts the salt embedded in the database hash and then hashes the user's login attempt using the same salt and compares the two hashes in constant time to prevent side channel timing attacks. Yeah. So if they match, we populate the $session user ID equals user ID in bracket because the session is stored securely on the server's hard drive. Now this is so now here the user is now authenticated for all future requests. So yeah, I think basically that's all I'm supposed to be presenting. So I think I'll pass it on to the next speaker, to the next my colleague. Yeah. So I think my colleague will be talking about password resetting and data inserting data. Yeah. Thank you.
Alright, so I'm going to continue with the intersection observer API. This one basically just covers the animation on the about us section, right? That animation, the auto counter animation I can see. So as you can see on 984, there is the intersection observer. Okay, so that one just basically waits until the content is within observable area so that the animation can play and the user can see it. We had some debate on this. We wanted to use an event listener that would listen for scrolling, though that one it kinda slows down the website. Whenever you scroll, the event listener has to run, so the website becomes slower. So we instead opted for an intersection observer. Okay, we passed an option for objects, the threshold, which was 0.5, as you can scroll down. I'm meaning this. Okay, then this tells us that, okay, basically it tells the website or the browser to activate or to play the animation at 50%. When I scroll through that section at 50%, the trigger will kick in and the animation will be played, right? So at exactly 50% of this element, I mean the observer, the of the element has entered the viewport. So at 50%, when the element has entered the viewport is basically what the user can see the whole screen. Okay, so at 50%, when it has entered the viewport, is when it plays. So when it triggers, we call that the animate counter. Inside the animate counter, that's around back up there at line 63, yes, right here. So that is the variable or constant that we made. So that's the one that automatically plays or counts the text, okay? And we also give it a default value, which is let count let count equal to 0, so that begins from 0, okay? Then it automatically counts by addition, okay? Then continuing down to around line 95 for our fourth JavaScript feature, which is the form validation. The form validation, basically, we catch the submit event and immediately call the prevent default. Basically, this prevent default, the prevent default, basically it stops the browser from reloading or refreshing to capture the new or the I can say the new data that a user is inputting into the newsletter form. Okay, so it prevents it from over refreshing, and that improves the user experience. Then it performs a string validation using regular expressions. Then I think we can be seeing that at around line 115. Okay, so let me explain each character. That one and also the dollar sign are basically anchors, ensuring that the pattern matches and matches the entire string from start to finish. Okay, then arithmetic the arithmetic operators, basically they are for calculations. Okay, then the different numbers, okay, those ones they dictate the length that must be between 7 and 15 characters. Okay, so basically our phone number, okay, when we are capturing, say in our, remember we're still under the newsletter, we're capturing a phone number, it should be between 7 to 15 characters. Okay, because sometimes someone can use the +256 then blah 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 blah, or you can opt for the default, which is the 077 dash dash dash. Okay, so we put some flexibility in there. Okay, now also the same thing for the email, we specified that it must have these each, okay, these each all at symbols, okay, for it to be a valid email. Okay, so if someone misses out this, an error message will pop up and it will be please enter a valid email address. If it's not a valid email, a valid number, it will also put out this message. Maybe if we can see that in action, when we scroll down here, we can maybe put a name, okay, then an email address. Then if I make this email address invalid, say I remove that each, okay, they press subscribe, you can see that please include an @ sign in the email address, okay, since that one is missing. So that is under also the what's it called, the newsletter validation. All right, then we also have something of like a fetch API in simple terms. Now in here we incorporated some PHP, okay, around the line 32, okay. So once validation passes line 32, basically it fetches the subscribe.php. The subscribe.php basically captures the name, contact, and email, okay. That's what it basically does. Going back to our code, so if that line part it passes, okay, remember we are also under an if statement, okay, we are under an if statement, so we are weighing two sides. So if it passes, we use the fetch API to send a post request, which is that fetch, okay, and returns a response, okay. So this response represents the completion of the network operation, okay, that we can chain with the request and also the requester JSON right here, okay. Then also the sorry for that disturbance, also the request, once it rejects, okay, I don't know whether you can see it down here, you can see it down here, there is a catch error, okay, right here. So if this one fails, it will be able to catch an error and it will tell you to try again, okay. But this fetch request is hitting, or it is responding to our PHP, okay. Nevertheless, we use the Java, okay, we put the PHP under a JavaScript, it still responds to the PHP backend, okay. And I'll maybe further